rate is going up this year.
Thank you, Jim. Casey, would you like to present the petitions?
On behalf of the fire company, there's 638,
Okay. Thanks, Tom.
638 signatures that have been gathered over the last 7 to 10 days in favor of the district being
Keeping the district.
keeping the district. That's correct.
Is that how the petition was worded?
It was worded the same way that the original petition was, but instead of dissolving the district, to keep the district.
Thank you. Well, it's public comment time. Would anyone else like to speak?
Kathleen Crippen, 564 Atlantic Avenue. First of all, I want to point out that the fire district was formed through a referendum vote, so it was the people in town who did vote to create the district to begin with. And about that time that referendum was held, my brother was the president of the volunteer fire company. So talking about fire company issues was dinner time conversation in my house for many, many years. And I took away 2 things from those conversations. One was, when the council controlled the money, the council did not always give the fire company the money they needed for the equipment they needed. And consequently, for many years, you all remember the nursing home on the north end of town, and also the Old Mill Restaurant. I can remember my brother Bob saying, we live in fear that either one of those places will burn because we do not have the equipment to put the fire out. We cannot reach the fire. We have to call Spring Lake to have them bring over the cherry picker. And unfortunately, that's exactly what happened when the old mill burned down, is that it was so advanced at the time they couldn't get the cherry picker over there fast enough to put water on it. The other thing that I would like to bring out, Mr. Merriman's comments about roof trusses and about possibly your son or daughter going through the roof. Well, it was my brother that went through the roof. It was on a fire on Prospect Avenue, and I don't remember, about 1980.
1980.
And Bob was the one who went up on the roof to chop the hole and went through. And I'm not sure how far down he
He
went.
fell about 14 feet, and 5 guys had to go into a burning building to get him. And he spent about 24 hours in the hospital.
So I would like for everyone to consider that yes, sometimes it isn't the person whose building burns that needs the equipment. Sometimes it is the people who go fight that fire that do need the equipment. And I know better than anybody, the budget's tight, money's hard. Nobody wants to pay more taxes. I don't want to pay more taxes. But, you know, sometimes you have to look at the weights and balances and say, do you give the fire company a little more? I mean, $145 a year, $147? You know, it's worth it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kat.
I just want to point out that when Kat was on the council, she did indicate to me about a year ago that she would vote to dissolve the fire district. And I also want to point out that back when the fire district was originally formed, it was formed because we had a 4% cap, and they couldn't buy the equipment necessary. So the district was formed in order to get equipment, and they have amassed a $400,000 budget. And Mr. Short, go ahead.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Pete Short, 2409 Kipling. First thing I'd like to say is that I understand, excuse me, the council looking carefully at where everybody's tax dollars go, especially in this day and age. So I applaud you for taking a close look. But before you decide to dissolve the fire district, I'd ask you to consider a couple of things. Number one, Mr. Lane brought up something before about if the borough takes over the ownership of the trucks, they're going to do an analysis of what's needed and what can be used and what's required in our town. And my question to you is this: who would do that analysis, and how much will it cost? And if we do decide that we need things for our fire company and to protect our citizens, who is going to be responsible for looking at those things? Who's going to decide what equipment is necessary, what training is necessary? You know, right now you have experts that are doing it for you as members of this district, as members of this fire company. These people are doing it on their own time. Are you going to now pay somebody to do that? A couple of years ago, this community paid a bill for an analysis of the police department that was laughable. And I say that having had some experience, because after that laughable analysis was done, for I think $20,000 to $30,000 in our tax money, I went with Bill Thurman and Jeff Algor and did a 6-month analysis of the police department for absolutely nothing, and made far more comprehensive and far more, I would say, positive recommendations for the department that was submitted to this council. It cost you nothing. So who will then do those analyses? Who's going to do that? You're telling us that, you know, you're not saying this, but I suggest that your goal is to try and save the taxpayers some money. You may end up picking up the tab for things that you hadn't anticipated. And before you dissolve the district, I would ask that you consider all of what you might be taking on and how much it might cost before you do it. It's currently being done by the people you see behind me in this room. And I would submit to you that there's probably no one that knows more about fire apparatus and no one who knows more about the type of trucks and the type of equipment we need to protect this community than that man sitting right there, Walter Gretz, who I've had the pleasure of knowing since I was in high school. Walter is all about the fire company and always has been. And I think he's an authority, one you should rely on when you're considering some of these things. The other thing I'd like to bring up, and it's not necessarily about taxes or the budget, is that if my charge for fire protection in this town is $149 a year, feel free to double it, because it's the best money I've ever spent. These people do a phenomenal job. And we're considering that we might have to ask them to take on a little bit more, that they might have to increase their fundraising efforts if somehow the funding sources are changed. They don't need to do more, folks. They do enough. They're standing here tonight because they support something that they believe in, something they work very hard at, and something we all benefit from. And we should be thanking them for just being here tonight, in addition to all the other things they do. You know, we talk about, you know, gee, we used to have a fireman's fair in town. How much more are we going to squeeze out of these people? You know, I'm not a volunteer fireman. I was in Spring Lake and Seagirt in the years that I lived there. But I don't have the time. I'm out of town more often than not these days. But I'll tell you what, you know, these people, we owe them such a tremendous debt of gratitude. To ask them to do one more thing is unconscionable. They do enough. I would just ask the council to consider all of these things before you decide to vote against this fire district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ray?
Ray Miller, 567 Monmouth Avenue in Spring Lake Heights. I was on the Board of Fire Commissioners for 9 years. From the day I started, I was on what they call the House Committee, which supposedly, I was told, was to meet with the fire department and go over their budget so they could present it each year. Not one time in 9 years did the chairman of that committee call a meeting. And every time I asked him about it, I was told, oh, whenever. I finally got disgusted and called a meeting myself. Mr. Wilms was there, and so was several people. Mr. Gretz made sure he was there. I asked him a simple question, how do you arrive at your budget? Mr. Wilms' answer was, what do you mean? I said, well, do you take last year's budget and go over, well, we didn't use all of this, so we can take some of that for there, we have to add some here. What do you mean? That was the stonewalling I got as a fire commissioner. Miss Cynthia can tell you the same thing. When she asks questions, she gets stonewalled and lied to, the same as I did. When I got done with that meeting, Roy Walker, who God bless him, he's passed on now, he was their treasurer. He came to me and said, Ray, what was this all about? I said, Roy, don't worry about it, because I knew I had been BS'd around the block. And that was my experience with it. We're not here to judge Spring Lake Heights Fire Department. I grew up with these guys. I have respect for them. We're here because they refuse to answer simple questions. If you read the CoStar article and you can vote to keep this fire district, then you're thinking more of next year's election than you are of what this wasteful spending is doing to the citizens of Spring Lake Heights. This is only one department that's costing us money. But when you ask a simple question and you get the rhetoric that you saw on the CoStar, that's all you get from these people. Mr. Wilms, Mr. Gretz will not answer a question in an honest and truthful and complete way.
Thank you.
That's all I have to say.
Gladys?
Gladys Herb, Pitney Drive. I just want to say, I think, Gladys Herb, Pitney Drive. I just want to say, I think these fellows, our police department, do a wonderful job. 6 o'clock tonight, the fire whistles were blowing, and I heard our truck sounding while I was out walking my dog. You have to realize if you take over, there's going to be an increase, a great increase in our tax rate, and you better face it. Appreciate what we have and what they do. I've been down here 60 years. I lived in a city where there was a brand new fire department right on the end of it. It still costs money whichever way you go, and I'm for our volunteers. Are we going to have them if this goes away? Think about that.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Go ahead, John.
Again, John Lewis, Prospect Avenue.
He does anything to get attention.
John, I don't think it's been working
I
anyway.
don't think it has been.
Yeah.
Well, let me first start out by saying I was a paid firefighter for 30 years. So I do know what truss construction is. Let me point out some of the instances where we're going to get in trouble down the road keeping a fire district. Rolling around in Trenton right now is Senate 2508. This is basically a health care bill that Mr. Gretz will be in charge of if it gets ever passed. And it sounds innocuous enough when it started. A 92-year-old fireman, a volunteer, broke his hip at a fire and then sued the fire department because he broke his hip. So the answer to that was have everybody get a doctor's note before you can be on a volunteer fire company, which doesn't seem so bad, except when you read the bill. The bill says the town will be responsible for any and all costs associated with getting that note. Now, right now, who picks the fire department? Who tells us who gets LSOP? Who will be telling them who gets to go every year? This note has to be produced. Every year you could send a fireman to the doctor and have him have an MRI, an EKG, and whatever his doctor assumes he needs to get a fire note. And any and all costs. I'm just pointing out to you what could happen in the future if the council is not in charge of this and Mr. Gretz is. And I'll go back and tell you my introduction to Wally in 1996, when the mayor put me on a public police and fire thing, trying to buy a fire truck. They wanted one, I was buying them for Hoboken, sit down and see what you could do. I came to Mr. Gretz, a very naive guy. I sat down and said, here's what we could do. I could get you a 75-foot platform on a pumper, brand new, for $350,000. Rejected. For him to sit here now and say he doesn't know how much that truck that he bought cost is silly, because he's the guy that bought it. And we mortgaged the firehouse to get it, that's how they came in the back door to buy it. And once they did, it's an ongoing thing. They just remortgaged the firehouse. This will never end. This truck that they have, this expense is an ongoing expense. At least if we had sensible people purchasing equipment, they would have taken the brand new one for $350 instead of what was passed. I don't think he wants to say $500,000 for a used truck that he might have bought from somebody that was whacking up a commission. Because at the time I said, this is crazy. Why would you buy a used truck for more money than I could get you a used one? For an extra 25 feet on the platform? But that's my introduction to him. The antenna goes up, I start reading the budgets. The council never read the budgets, I do. And when I see them and see the outrageous expense of buying a truck, now first of all, to go in 2002 and tell the people you're buying a truck for $350,000 when you're actually paying $430,000 for it, you can't buy a car in this state without the dealer making you sign on the bottom line for the full purchase price. They have to show you. The fire department doesn't have to do that. They, I guess, can tell you it's $300,000 and charge you $6,000 if that's how we're working. The last truck, they told us $560,000. What they didn't tell you is it failed 2 years prior when it was $640,000. Then they came back and it was $580,000 and it failed again. Then they lowered the price to $560,000, and this is the deal with the fire district. They can just pound you with February elections, special December elections, and eventually they're going to get what they want, and I'm trying to stop that. I want to see the city council. This is what my petition said. My petition said, clearly stated, I had people take it out of my hand and read it. It said it is for a public forum. And here we are talking about it. I'm trying to say that these people are here. What are they saying? They're saying they don't trust you people to fund the volunteer fire department. We have people from the Spring Lake department here that don't have a district. How is it working in Spring Lake? Pretty good? I thought you just said you're on the Spring Lake Fire Department. Where's Mr. Schufo? One of the commissioners is an engineer on the Spring Lake. He's not here either. He's a fire commissioner that didn't show up. Didn't think it was that important.
I said it was, years ago.
John?
Okay, here's my point. I'm going to read something and then I'll wait and see what people have to say. Taxpayers are entitled to expect that fire trucks are purchased properly and efficiently through a transparent, accountable procurement system. The competitive procurement process that is required by law has been reduced to a sham.
Could you tell us what you're reading from?
Well, I was going to tell you when I'm over because I don't want them to think that I wrote it. This is the Commission of Investigation, State of New Jersey. Wrote a white paper, not about Spring Lake Heights. They're just writing this in general about fire districts. And what this white paper says is that, if I get to the end, I'll just tell you what a commissioner in the Department of Community Affairs says. A senior official of the New Jersey Department of Community Affairs acknowledged that the current system is flawed. Now, when they found fire commissioners were taking commissions, selling their own company's fire trucks, or their families were, that's not illegal. Let's get that straight. But what the DCA said in their infinite wisdom, and when I spoke to the head of the DCA, here was his comment. I've got 39 years here, and I don't need this head. I need this like a hole in the head. When I was questioning him about some of the practices Spring Lake Heights uses. So, this system that they have, governing bodies with the fire commissioners, it's not illegal. All they said to them was, if you want to be a salesman, you have to sign up with us and register. But if your family is a salesman, you don't have to register. Only if you, a commissioner or a salesman, you have to register. They found 80% of what they investigated, there was, as the cover page says, fixed bids You tell me that you're buying a $641,000 fire truck and that nobody wanted to bid on it except KME. And if you go to KME's website, it says, let us show you how to be a sales representative. So, I mean, that pretty much says it all. When I called them up and told them I was a fire commissioner and wanted to buy a truck, but I wanted to collect the commission, the answer, without even asking me what town I was from, was we do that all the time. Then I called E1 here on Route 9. I've dealt with them in years past. I got another introduction from the current chief. I sat down with the salesman. He says it's done all the time. Commissioners are in there buying rigs, and they are the salespeople. I'm just trying to say we need an open and transparent way this is purchased. And from what you read in the newspaper, what you saw here today. I mean, if they have the slightest hint that it's going in the wrong direction, they have memory loss. He bought the fire truck and he can't tell you what he paid for it. And here it is, the fire company is paying a mortgage and has the nerve to go out every year. You want to go back in budgets here, till 96 and 97? 97, he took $35,000 that they were giving the fire truck, the fire company, and arbitrarily made it $65,000. And then $75,000, and back to $65,000. This is for 15 years. Add all that money up, and I want to know if the people in the fire company know that the hundreds of thousands of dollars that are in that account is yours. But who has the checkbook to the fire company account? Mr. Wills?
The fire company has a check.
Who exactly has the fire truck, the checkbook? Who gets to sign the checks?
We're not going to answer that.
Ah, okay.
We're not going to answer that because
I rest my
the
case.
president and the treasurer get to sign the checks.
I rest my case.
Okay, would anyone else like to, yes, certainly.
I want to address that because he's made some allegations relative to the integrity of these firemen. Very serious
No, I
allegations.
didn't.
John, let him speak,
Very
please.
serious allegations, okay? That there's big rigging, that there's no transparency, that they're trying to do things illegal. That's not true. That's not true. I've been representing fire districts and fire companies for 35 years. I've never once seen a fireman do anything other than what's in the best interest of the fire service. And to accuse these people of doing that is totally inappropriate and shouldn't be followed. Mr. Lane, I think any future comments like that should be stricken.
Thank you. Is there anyone else, Bobby, and I know I let John do, I'm
We're
sorry.
standing here, all of these fire commissioners are public officials, okay? Our firemen are part of that public official system. They're employees of the fire district. This man is accusing all of these public officials of committing a crime, and that's inappropriate. And we shouldn't allow
That's
this
not true.
as a forum to do that.
Okay, thank you. Bobby, would you like to comment?
I would like to second, I've lived in this town over 50 years. I thought this was to be an information gathering. Unfortunately, it's turned into a witch hunt that is veiled very nicely. I think your motion to get answers and get all the answers you need should be one that should be passed tonight.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Ray?
Yeah, as a fire commissioner, I was on the truck committee. And I can tell you, and I will swear on the Bible, that the company that was gonna build the truck was selected. They were given the material list of what they wanted on that truck. That company drew up the specifications, and then the fire company put their name on it. And when I found out about it, when I read in the newspaper that the FBI was after Monmouth County for doing that, I went to the fire company and I said so, and they told me, well, that's the way it's done. I called a fire company that was bidding on a truck and told them what was going on. They were more interested in who I was. I said, I'll tell you what, if you come in with a complaint against them, I'll stand up and tell you who I am. But until then, you're more interested in who I am than the fact that you're gonna bid on something that you're not gonna get. It's already been decided. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you, Ray. Would anyone else like to speak at the mic? Please come up to the mic so we don't waste time in between.
I'm Howard Rockhill, 2413 Hamilton Avenue. I don't normally come to these meetings because I'm a volunteer over in the First State, and you run the same nights. However, I know most of you up there, but I've lived in town 67 years, and only one of you up there, Sarah, has lived in this town that long. We've watched this town grow. The fire company has done a fantastic job over the years that it's been in existence. I put in over 50 years doing this. First aid, 20, 50 in the fire company. That's not to pat myself on the back, that's to tell you that I volunteered for the town that many years. I dare to say there isn't anyone other than us that has volunteered to be a fireman. Now, there was a petition by Mr. Lewis and those people that went out and get it, who were willing to sign their name to get rid of a district. I'd love to see those people sign their name on an application to join the fire company. Get out of bed. Get out of bed at 3 o'clock in the morning and go and fight a fire. Get sweaty, and then you have to go to work the next day. Now, as far as fundraising is concerned, years ago, yes, there were a lot of fundraisers. We had time to do that. People weren't working 2 jobs. People weren't out of town. A lot of your volunteers were in town. They could go to a fire in the daytime. You have not got that statistic now. Most of you work out of town. Or if you don't, you can't leave your jobs. All right, now that in itself, volunteerism is down. No matter whether it's first aid, fire, or whatever. Little League, you have the same people doing it every year. You have the same people out here that are doing it every day. I have the same amount over there doing the first aid every day. There's 5 or 6 that you'll see on every call. I go to a house. Oh, you're volunteer. You don't get paid? No, I don't get paid, ma'am. We're doing this on volunteer. Where do you live? Spring Lake Heights. Oh, that's great. Glad to hear that. Why? Because I came down from up north, and we had the paid company. They'd be here a little bit later than you. You were a little quicker than them. Yes, that's what's happening. Volunteers are down, and as far as I'm concerned, I'm a taxpayer. That $149 is damn cheap for the fire protection in this town. And I would continue to pay that $149 gladly, even volunteering. So my benefit of $149, I put that much more into it by volunteering than a lot of you have. A lot of you have. And you all know that I'm standing here telling you exactly what I'm saying. If you haven't volunteered and you haven't put your name on a piece of paper saying you're going to, then don't fight the $149. Thank you.
Rocky, I am a volunteer in the town.
I'm not saying
And I
that.
don't get paid, and put in long hours.
Evelyn.
Okay? The guys here do a tremendous job. Casey, I know his skills, I know his ability. What I'm listening to, I've heard over and over for years here, in very different scenarios in different locations, okay? All boils down to the same thing. Communication, record keeping, transparency. And that is what I'm asking the council to do. Tom, make the motion again, hopefully go through it. Learn as much as you can. I'm surprised Mr. McGill didn't come more prepared, didn't have copies. But you learn. You learn from those sort of things. I know this company, and I know from this point forward, all these guys want to get to the bottom of everything. They want to not have any clouds over their heads. And that's what I think we're tasking as taxpayers our council to do.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? No one coming?
Well, sorry about that. I know you didn't want me to.
20 after 10.
Not this long-winded guy. I'm Bill Fury, 1707 Bright Lane, Spring Lake Heights. As you know, I'm former police chief. I spent 26 years in this town, working for the town. I'm a 50-year volunteer at fire company. I'm a 10-year volunteer at the school board. I sat up there at public health. I was head of that. I was head of the historical society. and any other stupid thing. Fundraising, you name it, I've been there. It's time we listen to, John Lewis went out and got some people to sign a petition. We got 282 roughly. We got 638. Do the math, folks. Pay attention to what your people are saying in town. Think about it. Mr. Borbeck has a great idea. Let's get the rest of the stuff out there and stop the nonsense about Mrs. Cynthia saying we don't get any money, any info back. Let's get the accountant, let's get the auditor, let's get them all together with Mr. Lane and the council, and let's do it right. Get all the paperwork on the table and stop pussyfooting around. Let's do it the right way.
Thank you, Bill. With no one else coming to the microphone, could I have a motion to close the public hearing, please?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
I think now should we go consideration of resolution number 74, 2011, to dissolve the Spring Lake Heights Fire District Number 1.
I'm gonna second it for purposes of discussion.
You're seconding it for purposes of discussion. So we have a motion and a second. Casey, is there a problem?
There was something I wanted to say, and I guess I just didn't get the attention of the people.
Okay.
I apologize if I didn't put my hand
Um,
on it. That's,
Okay, I have a motion on the floor.
Your Honor, I didn't get who offered it, who seconded that.
Diver and King.
Thank you.
Patty made the motion, and John Brennan said he would second it for purposes of discussion.
It was John seconded, I'm sorry.
Any discussion? Tom?
Yeah, frankly speaking, I would like to see more information presented. I think it's, first of all, thanks to the firemen. I think everybody here reiterate what Mr. Diver said. Nobody here questions your integrity. And you got the deepest gratitude for all the volunteers. Absolutely. Having said that, I would recommend or make a motion that we postpone this vote so that we have adequate time to get an accountant here from the fire commission. So we have current financial statements, including income statements, income and expenditures, assets and liabilities, monthly balances maybe for 3 years, copies of the vouchers, mortgage statements, and anything else anybody else would like to see, so we can have a full discussion and understand everything. I think it's fair.
Are you making a motion to amend the motion that's on the floor?
Well, I guess I was offering that as a statement. Maybe I'll make it.
Can I just make a comment?
That's right, sure.
This resolution does not dissolve the fire company.
Yeah, it does.
The fire company, come on, I thought it was good.
The fire district.
Oh, the district, the
District.
district. This only allows us to go to DCA
Right.
to
This only, it
get a
does not
plan.
dissolve the district. It allows us to go to the DCA. The district can only be dissolved by ordinance. So we would go to the DCA and say, this is our proposal. Our proposal is not to cut the budget. It's just to bring the budget into the municipal budget so that we can clean up how the finances are done, have all the bills on the bill list,